Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay, I'm recuperating from devotee interaction overload. Devotees are carrying around a lot of stuff. And the only reason they're carrying it around is because they think it's theirs. My family, my problems, my health, my everything, even my spiritual master, as opposed to someone else's spiritual master. Mine! It just carries over and carrying it around because it's mine. It's Hare Krishna. Anyway, I'm recuperating from associating with devotees who think all this stuff is theirs. Hare Krishna. I purposely live a lifestyle where that's minimized. My this, my that. It's minimized. I mean, you know, I still deal with it because it's my consciousness, but I kind of minimized the material situation of, like, my family, my money, my job, my house, my car, my health, my body. I deal with it, but I'm kind of minimally. Hare Krishna. And with a big helping of Hare Krishna. A big dose of Hare Krishna in there. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. We can't remain inactive for a moment. The soul is always active. So we're either active in a field of activity where my this, my that, my, or we're in a field of activity where we're serving Krishna and we're developing consciousness of Krishna, that everything belongs to Krishna. I belong to Krishna. So it can be a long process. And who we associate with, who Krishna makes the arrangements. It's like who I come in contact with. It's actually Krishna's arrangement. And I'm like the eternal optimist. I see everything optimistically. I don't see negativity. I don't see pessimism. So I was thinking about that old little saying about how you see a glass that has something in it. Do you see it half empty, or do you see it as half full? Well, I'm the half full person. I always see it half full. It's like the pessimistic outlook is, it's only half full. And it took so much time for it to be half full. I don't think it's ever going to get full. Pessimism. Like, it could be, how much time did it take for that to get half full? It took 5 minutes. That's too long. Well, what if it took 12,000 lifetimes to be half full? It's never going to get full. But the optimist, they say, wow, it's half full. It doesn't matter how long it took. It's half full. It's going to get full. It's half full. Krishna. So I'm coming into contact with some very, very pessimistic people. Very negative. It's never going to, everything's wrong. Nothing's any good. Everything's only half full. And it'll never get full. And I have to do something about it. Like, mostly complain. Well, I'm not a half-empty person. I'm a half-full person. And it reminds me of the pastime with, I think it was Mukunda Dutt, who, this is in Chaitanya Lila, he was an associate of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But he used to go to these other gatherings where impersonalists were teaching, and mostly like that, impersonal teachings about not the personality of Godhead, but the spiritual nature of everything, kind of not surrendering to the actual message of the Vedas, where Krishna says, I am what is to be known. So they're kind of like that. There was lack of devotion in the study and in the discussion. The goal wasn't a person. The goal was transcendence, but it wasn't. The goal wasn't to have a relationship with the personality of Godhead. So he would go to those meetings, and he didn't say anything. He would sit there and he would just be with everybody, and he'd listen. He was an associate of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but he didn't do anything. He'd just sit there and see what they were doing. He was like visiting. He was sightseeing. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu heard about it, and he couldn't stand that. He said, no, let him just stay there. He goes to these gatherings, he doesn't say anything, he doesn't help anybody, he doesn't present the truth, he doesn't make a personal presentation as a person, as a devotee. He doesn't make any presentation in his own devotion. He just blends in and sits there. He says, I don't want him here. That's a contamination. I don't want him here. Let him just stay there. He can't come here. Let him stay there. So when Mukunda Dat heard, he was devastated. Oh my God, I have to stay here with these people? No, it can't be. So he asked the devotees, he said, ask the Lord when I can come back. When can I come back? When can I come back? I can't stay here forever. When can I come back? So Mahaprabhu said, well, tell him after 1,000,000 lifetimes he can come. After 1,000,000 lifetimes he can come back. Tell him he can come back, but not 1,000,000 lifetimes. So they told Mukunda, he says, what did he say? What did he say? He said you can come back. Oh, great. But not after 1,000,000 lifetimes. Only after 1,000,000 lifetimes. And he got up and he danced. He was in ecstasy. He says, why are you so blissful? It's 1,000,000 lifetimes. He said, so what's 1,000,000 lifetimes? I'll come back eventually. I'm coming back. So 1,000,000 lifetimes. All right, that's what he says. Okay, 1,000,000 lifetimes. Okay. And then I'll be back. So they went back to Mahaprabhu and they said, we told him. He said, Mahaprabhu said, so what did he say? What was his reaction? He started dancing in ecstasy. And we asked him, I said, why are you so blissful? Why are you so ecstatic? He said, well, I'm coming back. It's just 1,000,000 lifetimes. Mahaprabhu heard that. He said, oh, go get him. Bring him here. Bring him here. Bring him here. It's okay. Bring him here. So, he could have seen that 1,000,000 lifetimes as half empty, and become morose. And he didn't. He saw it as half full. Wow, half full, I'm on my way. Just a little more to go, 1,000,000 lifetimes. Krishna. Yeah, I don't go the pessimist road. I just don't go that road. Now, evidently, devotees who have that pessimistic, half-full kind of thing, and it's almost like doubt that it'll ever happen, because it's such a long time, maybe 5 minutes, but it's such a long time. They're not in the present moment, they're looking at the future, that it's going to take such a long time, it may never happen, and they have all these doubts, and they're not in the present moment. And so many ideas of mine, holding on to all this stuff is mine. My problems. It's just not in the present moment. That Krishna's here, he's in his holy name. Wherever we are, wherever we go, wherever we meet, we can be in Krishna consciousness, and they can also infect something from someone who's in Krishna consciousness in the present moment. They become a living, walking, breathing connection to Krishna. If they're connected, even if they're only half full. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So this half-empty program, no taste for it, and no taste for half-empty, no taste. It's so dark, and it just leaves everything open to all kinds of misery. Half-empty. There could be, if you're only half full, that's all right, half full. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. More is coming. I mean, welcome it. Welcome. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna. Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Wow, I just can't do with this half-empty, pessimistic. Just can't do it, man. I can't be around that. I can't be around that. So, I'm just recuperating. Krishna. Krishna, I wonder if it helps anybody if I go into association with devotees who are practicing to one degree or another in Krishna consciousness, that they're stuck in this half-empty, negative, it's kind of like fault-finding, really. They, like a thief, because they have a thief mentality, they think everyone's a thief. And they think everyone's stealing, because that's their mentality. They see, they're always looking for opportunities to steal and something. And so they think everybody's a thief. So carrying around this negativity, it's only half full, it's never going to get full, it's not processed, it's something wrong. And ultimately it goes to the spiritual master, that the spiritual master is deficient, because his movement and his followers, they're only half full. And it's been all this time. It's all negative, so dark. So dark. Wow, so dark. Oh man. So I wonder if it does any good to try to befriend someone like that and engage in loving exchange gifts, try to reveal the mind in confidence, exchange prasadam. I wonder if it does any good. Like, I'm feeling the effects of taking association that's negative. Like, I'm feeling the effects. Woo-hoo-hoo. Where's Where's the garbage bag? Ooh, not the person, but the energies. Ooh, put it in there. Out it goes. But I wonder if on their end, they're getting any benefit. Because I'm not negative like that. I wonder if any of the positive, enthusiastic joyfulness of half full is getting in there. I wonder if it has any effect. I think it must, although minuscule. I think it must have some effect. Because without association of devotees who are on the full side, how will the ones that are empty side, how will they get full? So it must be at least a few drops dripping over in there of joyfulness and bliss and, it must. But I gotta take a break. Oh, God. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. Yeah, I'm gonna read something. I think Krishna book. Let's lighten up here. Whew. Lighten up. Lighten up. Let's fill up. Time to fill up. Time to fill up the tank. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare. Some of this Hare Krishna petrol. This is the summary study of the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, translated with commentaries by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Alright, so, what is it? Ishopanishad. I get to read, then I think it's something else. Ishopanishad is one who can see nescience and knowledge side by side, sees things as they are. So it's not that the negativity doesn't exist. It exists. But it can see it side by side with, it's like the shadow exists, but the sunlight is predominant. Krishna. What's that old song? Me and my shadow. Or there's another old song. The shadow of your smile. Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare. Shadow. The shadow. The shadow is the darkness. It's the reflection in the darkness. The shadow. So one who can see the shadow as well as what it is reflecting, sees things as they are. But to simply be caught in the shadow. And also Plato, he came up with his analogy of the cave, that people, they're in the darkness and they're chained up inside a cave. And they can only see forward. They can't see anywhere else. They're chained up in such a way that they're sitting there. They can only see like tunnel vision. And in front of them is a screen, and they see shadows of things and people acting out on the screen. Interesting, they didn't have movies at that time. That he had this projector idea, and that in back of them, where they can't see, the actual persons and animals and trees and everything is actually there. But what they're seeing is like projecting the shadows. You know how when you do, a bunny rabbit, you get the flashlight and you project the bunny rabbit on the wall. That's what they're seeing. They're seeing the shadows of things. They're not actually seeing the things. So one person who was chained up like that, I forget how he got free, but he became free. He wasn't chained anymore. And he turned around and he looked and he saw there was light behind him that was projecting these things. And he left. He wasn't chained anymore. He went outside the cave into the sunlight. And he could see the actual trees and people and animals and all the activities that were going on there. And he realized what was happening. That these people were in prison. And all they could see were the shadows and the reflections. He ran back in, try and help them. They couldn't hear him. They were chained. They couldn't listen. They just thought he was crazy. They couldn't see because they were chained up. So we're seeing the shadows, the darkness, the negativity. We're not seeing or experiencing the actual light that's coming from the personality. Go ahead. So, some devotees get very negative because all they can still see is just the shadows. They can't actually see or experience or accept in the present moment the source, the spiritual source. Because they're chained up with this idea of my problems, my body, my difficulties. I have to fix it. They're chained up. Me, I. They're hearing the messages of Godhead. And when somebody is actually free, they hear them as just crazy or something. Or they can't actually hear. So one who sees knowledge alongside nescience sees things as they are. Ishopanishad. Let me see if I can find it. The actual verse. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. See, if we're actually getting realizations, then these verses are confirmation. Like we study the verses and we read the verses and we know where everything is. And then, so the learning isn't exactly memorizing verses for the sake of knowing verses, like it's just some knowledge or something. The verses are there so that they're confirmation for what we're experiencing and what we may be realizing. This is realized knowledge. Oh no, you can't have any realization. How can I don't have any realization? How can you have any realization? You can't have, I don't have realization. How can you have realization? I don't have any realization. How can you have realization? You're not bona fide. No. I have to just keep looking at the shadows. Stay absorbed in my sense of problems. So here's, you can't have any realization. So here's mantra 11. Vidyam vidya shan vidyam vidya chavidyam chayas te vedobhayam saha avidyayam ritam tirtva vidyayam ritamashnute. Vidyam cha vidyam chayas te vedobhayam saha avidyayam ritam tirtva vidyayam ritamashnute. Only one who can learn the process of nescience and that of transcendental knowledge side by side can transcend the influence of repeated birth and death and enjoy the full blessings of immortality. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama. Okay, the process by Prabhupada's, part of Prabhupada's purport, the process by which one goes back to Godhead is a different branch of knowledge than material things. And it has to be learned from revealed Vedic scriptures such as Upanishad, Vedanta Sutra, Bhagavad Gita, and Srimad Bhagavatam. To become happy in this life and attain a permanent blissful life after leaving this material body, one must study the sacred literature and obtain transcendental knowledge. The conditioned living being has forgotten his eternal relationship with God and has mistakenly accepted the temporary place of his birth as all in all. The Lord has kindly delivered the above-mentioned scriptures in India and other scriptures in other countries to remind the forgetful human being that his home is not here in this material world, this cave. The living being is a spiritual entity, and he can be happy only by returning to his spiritual home. From his kingdom, outside the cave, outside the prison, the personality of Godhead sends his bona fide servants to propagate this message by which one can return to Godhead. And sometimes the Lord comes himself to do this work. Since all living beings are his beloved sons, his parts and parcels, God is more sorry than we ourselves to see the sufferings we're constantly undergoing in this material condition. Blinders on, looking at shadows, me and my problems. The miseries of this material world serve to indirectly remind us of our incompatibility with dead matter. So, the first question for spiritual life is, why am I suffering? So that's what the material miseries, that's their positive side. That's their on the full side. On the empty side, oh, I'm suffering so much, hopeless. And on the full side is, oh, these miseries are here to remind me that I'm not compatible with this material energy. I can't really enjoy it. Not really. Without blowback. The miseries of this material world serve to indirectly remind us of our incompatibility with dead matter. Wow. You know, there's something that some people who are really, really caught in the mode of ignorance sometimes do. They try to have sex with a dead body. It's called necrophilia. And it is something that people do. Not everyone, in that sense. But actually, to try to enjoy this material body, whether there's a soul in it or not. Everyone's a necrophiliac. Oh God. Krishna, because what's Prabhupada says is dead matter. Matter is never alive. So this thing about trying to have sex with... Now, sexual activity is not... Krishna says, I am sex, according to religious principles, because the purpose of sex life is to procreate. So when sex is performed according to the prescriptions given in the scriptures, the Vedic scriptures are very specific. There are sacrifices that are performed, Garbhadan Samskara, and different types of purificatory activities are done to engage in sex to produce a nice child. Because that gives that soul an opportunity to make spiritual advancement. They're waiting. They want to come to the material world, to the earth planet specifically, because of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because of his recent incarnation, which makes transcendence, and going back to Godhead, an express route. It can be done in one lifetime, less than 100 years, on the earth planet. Whereas in the heavenly planets, the lifetimes are like, 10,000 years by the calculation of the demigods, some extra astronomical amount of time for one lifetime. Yeah, it's nice up there. It's like, an exclusive gated community or something. But it's still death, eventually. I don't think descriptions is they don't have disease and old age, but they still have death. And when the death comes, their pious credits are used up, and they have to take a lower birth. Because that's how you get to that gated community, is because you got the moolah. You got the money. You can pay because of your austerities and your sacrifices that you did in previous lives. It gets you into an exclusive neighborhood. But when your bank account runs out, you can't stay there, you can't pay it. You ran out, you gotta leave. But on the earth planet now, because of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the Harinam Sankirtan, one lifetime you can go back home. One lifetime. Finished. Or at least make a hell of a lot of advancement in one lifetime. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Krishna is never lost. Whatever anyone does is never lost. And it's pick it up in the next lifetime if you don't make it. So they're waiting in line to come here to this right now, at this time, place, and circumstance. As miserable as it is according to the half-full pessimistic ones. Yeah, it's a nasty place. But they're seeing it on the half-full side. Wow, what an opportunity. Hare Krishna. So, when sexual activity between the husband and the wife is done nicely like that, according to religious principles, then one of these great souls that's waiting to take part in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan, they can take birth on the earth planet, and they can do it in a lifetime. And that's what's going on. That's why I'm on the half-full side. Because Krishna's in control. Ultimately, if somebody is like really pessimistic, they don't actually believe in Krishna. Not really. How can you have faith and love for God and be pessimistic? How can you do that? Something is blocking that full love and surrender to God. And what's blocking it is offenses to devotees. That's what's blocking it. Offense. That's what blocks it. That's the big one. Offensive to devotees. You're like this. You can't see the devotees. Everything's half empty, very pessimistic. There's almost no hope. Hare Krishna. So I'm recuperating from devotee association. The half-empty type. Woo! Krishna. But I'm thankful. I'm very thankful because I get to have realizations. And I'm hoping that whatever little bit of association may have had some positive effect in all of that negativity. So it takes a little while. Let's see if this positive effect poison poisons their negative nectar. I don't know. Hare Krishna. It's depending on Krishna. Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Okay, here's the remedy. The guaranteed path, Prabhupada, to the aim of vidya, or knowledge, is described by Srila Rupa Goswami in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which we have presented in English as the nectar of devotion. The culture of vidya is summarized in Srimad Bhagavatam in the following words. Tasmad ekena manasa Bhagavan sattvatam prati Shrotavya kirtitavyascha jaya pujaschcha nityada. Translation. Therefore, with one pointed attention, one should constantly hear about, glorify, remember, and worship the personality of Godhead, who is the protector of the devotees. Unless religion, economic development, and sense gratification aim toward the attainment of devotional service to the Lord, they are simply different forms of nescience, as Srila Upanishad indicates in the following mantras. So that's a purport to mantra 11. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in his conversation with Ramananda Roy, also rejects Ramananda Roy is presenting different features of devotional activities for cultivating love of Godhead, and at one point he presents Banashura system for human society. And Mahaprabhu rejects it. He says, no, it's just external. Go deeper. That's external. I want the internal. I want the internal truth. That's external. So, Prabhupada also, he says here, unless religion, economic development, and sense gratification aim toward the attainment of devotional service. So they're not actually devotional service. They aim toward the attainment. Just like the four regulative principles that a devotee vows to follow, takes a vow. No meat, fish, or eggs, no intoxication, no gambling, and no illicit connections, no illicit sex. They are aiming toward the attainment of devotional service to the Lord. The things that help an organized human society peaceful, in the mode of goodness as much as possible, aims toward the development. Just like getting a birth in a high family is an opportunity, because you're not dealing all the time with, where's my next meal coming from, or, oh, my father's drunk, he's beating the kids again, or, you know, I have to deal with those things. Abuse, I have to deal with it. Abusive society, barbaric families, abusive parents. And you don't have to deal with abuse. The abuse is minimized. Actually, violence means not telling someone about Krishna or helping them toward love of Godhead. It's actually a kind of abuse. But it's minimized. And it helps toward religion, economic development, sense gratification, unless they aim toward the attainment of devotional service to the Lord. They're different forms of nescience, ignorance. And then the other verses, this was 11, 12, and on, 18 verses in this Upanishad. They will discuss how that is. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. All that we offer and give away and all that we do should be done as an offering to Krishna, for Krishna's pleasure. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Therefore, one-pointed attention. So we should constantly, it doesn't say continuously, it says constantly. I wonder what the difference between constant and continuous is. I think continuous allows for break in between. Like you can, like when they have these programs on TV, and it's a continuous program, but it's once a week. Like the continuing saga of, it's once a week. It's continuous. It keeps, but constantly there's no break. Oh, I see. Continuous. Well, it says here, uninterrupted, continuing in time or space without interruption. Continuous. Without interruption. Unbroken, whole, without interruption. And what's the difference between constant? Occurring continuously. A situation or state of affairs that does not change. Something invariable or unchanging. Now they're talking mathematically. A constant. Constant, not leaving. A constant. Constant. Without change. So there is a little different. A slight, very subtle difference in the words. Continuous means unbroken. And constant means unchanging. Constant. Interesting to look at those two words. So Prabhupada, in the translation here, he uses the word constant. He doesn't say continuous. He says constantly here, unchanging. Constantly. Fixed. Krishna, interesting use of that word. Constantly. What's the... Well, there's no word for word here. It's in the Bhagavatam. I want to see what he says in the Bhagavatam. 1:2:14. What he says about that verse. The Bhagavatam. 1:2:14. Books. 1, 2. 2. Oh no, 1. It's the chapter Divinity and Divine Service, and verse 14. Okay, so Nityada is the Sanskrit. Constantly. His purport: if realization of the absolute truth is the ultimate aim of life, it must be carried out by all means. In any one of the above-mentioned castes and orders of life, the four processes, namely glorifying, hearing, remembering, and worshiping, are general occupations. Glorifying, hearing, remembering, and worshiping. Glorifying, that's chanting. Hearing, remembering, and worshiping are general occupations. Without these principles of life, no one can exist. Especially activities of the living being involve engagements. Glasses. Hare Krishna. Activities of the living being involve engagements in these four different principles of life, especially in modern society. All activities are more or less dependent on hearing and glorifying. Any man from any social status becomes a well-known man in human society within a very short time if he is simply glorified truly, or falsely, in the daily newspapers. Sometimes political leaders of a particular party are also advertised by newspaper propaganda. By such a method of glorification, an insignificant man becomes an important man within no time. But such propaganda by false glorification of an unqualified person cannot bring about any good, either for the particular man or for the society. There may be some temporary reactions to such propaganda, but there are no permanent effects. Therefore, such activities are a waste of time. The actual object of glorification is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who has created everything manifested before us. We have broadly discussed this fact from the beginning of the Janmadhyasya shloka of this Bhagavatam. 1:1:1. The tendency to glorify others or hear others must be turned to the real purport of glorification of the Supreme Being. And that will bring happiness. We won't be in the cave glorifying the shadows, either positively or negatively. Hare Krishna, and that will bring happiness. We will not be turning our attention to the shadows only and obsessing on problems. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Alright, so time to glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead. How's that? And this is Lord Krishna's fight with Banashura. So Chitraleka went to Dwarka and kidnapped Krishna's grandson Aniruddha and brought him, while he was sleeping, into the very well fortified palace of Banashura in Sonitapur. And there he enjoyed a loving conjugal relationship with Banashura's lovely daughter Usha. Usha became pregnant, and everyone panicked. How is this possible? How could anyone have gotten in here? She's never even seen a boy. What happened? Banashura was furious because now his reputation, and this is very disgraceful, and his whole dynasty has been ruined. His reputation is ruined. He's the king of Sonitapur. It's a huge scandal. He's a laughing stock. And his virgin maiden daughter has been violated. Oh, it's a travesty, huge travesty. So Banashura received many benedictions from Lord Shiva, one of them being 1,000 arms. He was very, very powerful. No one would fight with him. My goodness, 1,000 arms. How do you, don't enter a battle you can't win. The guy's got 1,000 arms. Forget it. So he tried to have his soldiers capture Aniruddha. When he saw Aniruddha and Usha together, he was attracted. He said, wow, they're a great couple. She really chose somebody appropriate. She has good taste. This is a handsome young man. But because of the situation as it was, the scandal, he sent his soldiers not to kill Aniruddha, but to try and capture him. And he destroyed them all, killed all the soldiers. And he was about to make his escape, and Banashura received another benediction from Lord Shiva, a type of weapon called a Nagapasa, snake noose, whatever that is. It's not described exactly how it worked, but we would think that it would have been something that was controlled by a mantra, because many of their weapons at the time were controlled by sound vibrations, weapons, mantras. So he captured Aniruddha. And Usha's in complete distress, totally confused, and was crying and screaming. And the Yadu dynasty has come with all their soldiers, surrounded the city of Sonitapur, and they're fighting. Krishna's there, Balaram's there, Lord Shiva's there, and all his assistants and associates. So it's quite an affair. The demigods are there watching the whole thing. Their hairs are standing on end. And Lord Shiva is fighting with Krishna and Balaram. Lord Shiva is considered Ashutosh, the greatest. Is it Ashutosh? forget what Ashutosh means. Anyway, he's the greatest Vaishnava. And he's fighting with Krishna and Balaram because he wants to give shelter to someone who has surrendered to him. This is a very interesting scenario, how that works. Now, all Banashura's army's been, and then there was also a demigoddess named Kotara, who Banashura worshipped, and she wanted to protect him also. He was a very faithful worshipper of these demigods. And she diverted Krishna's attention as he was going after Banashura and appeared before him naked with hair scattered in front of Krishna. Krishna didn't like to see it. He didn't want to see that. So while he was distracted, Banashura escaped. Now, the battle has escalated. Although Banashura's army is completely destroyed, all his bows and arrows are broken, he just became more angry. He couldn't see, to admit defeat. He just became more and more angry. He still has his 1,000 arms and this desire to use them. He's becoming more and more angry. So he released a weapon that he had. No, it was actually Lord Shiva released a weapon called the Shivajiwara, which is characterized by excessive heat. And it is so scorching, it was burning fire in all directions. So to counteract that, Lord Krishna released his Narayanjwara, which is excessive cold. And the cold, what happens with cold is if you've got heat to the extreme and cold to the extreme, cold will win. Cold will take, the heat won't heat up the cold will take the heat and make it cold. So the Shivajiwara is actually a personality, and he was starting to shiver. He was losing his heat. So Shivajiwara takes shelter of Krishna, and with folded hands he began to pray. My dear Lord, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you, because you have unlimited potencies. No one can surpass your potencies, and thus you are the Lord of everyone. Generally, people consider Lord Shiva to be the most powerful personality in the material world. But Lord Shiva is not all-powerful. You are all-powerful. This is factual. You are the original consciousness or knowledge. Without knowledge or consciousness, nothing can be powerful. A material thing might be very powerful, but without a touch of knowledge or consciousness, it cannot act. A material machine may be very gigantic and wonderful, but without the touch of someone conscious and in knowledge, the material machine is useless for all purposes. My Lord, you are complete knowledge, and there is not a pinch of material contamination in your personality. Lord Shiva may be a powerful demigod because of his specific power to annihilate the whole creation. And similarly, Lord Brahma may be very powerful because he can create the entire universe. So Lord Shiva may be a powerful demigod because of his specific power to annihilate the whole creation. And Lord Brahma may be very powerful because he can create the entire universe. But actually, neither Brahma nor Shiva is the original cause of the cosmic manifestation. You are the absolute truth, the Supreme Brahman, and you are the original cause. The original cause of the cosmic manifestation is not the impersonal Brahman effulgence. That impersonal Brahman effulgence is resting on your personality. As is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, the cause of the impersonal Brahman is Lord Krishna. This Brahman effulgence is likened to the sunshine which emanates from the sun globe. Therefore, impersonal Brahman is not the ultimate cause. The ultimate cause of everything is the supreme eternal form of Krishna. So that impersonal Brahman effulgence is resting on your personality. The Brahman effulgence is like the sunshine which emanates from the sun globe. So the impersonal effulgence is emanating from something. It's not the ultimate cause, it's an emanation. The ultimate cause is the supreme eternal form of Krishna. All material actions and reactions are taking place in the impersonal Brahman. But in the personal Brahman, the eternal form of Krishna, there's no action and reaction. The impersonal Brahman and the personal Brahman. So yeah, everything is Brahman. It's all Brahman. It's all spiritual. But there are differentiations. And there is an impersonal aspect to Brahman. But it is subordinate to the personal aspect. Material actions and reactions are taking place in the impersonal Brahman. In the personal Brahman, the eternal form of Krishna, there's no action and reaction. My Lord, your body is therefore completely peaceful, completely blissful, and is devoid of material contamination. So that's the external aspect of the Lord. The impersonal Brahman, the effulgence, is external to his personal form. It's an emanation. It's external. Wow. Hare Krishna. Boy, to hear it discussed like this. So the Shivajiwara continues. In the material body there are actions and reactions of the three modes of material nature. The time factor is the most important element and is above all others. Because the material manifestation is affected by time agitation. Okay, so you've got the three modes of material nature. They're very powerful. The demigods in control of them. But they are subject to time. So time is above all the others, because time affects all the modes. Thus, natural phenomena come into existence, and as soon as there is the appearance of the phenomena, fruitive activities are visible. As a result of fruitive activities, a living entity takes his form. He acquires a particular type of nature, which is packed up in a subtle body and a gross body, formed by the life air, the ego, the 10 senses, the mind, and the 5 gross elements. Then these create the type of body which later becomes the root or cause of various other bodies, which are acquired one after another by the transmigration of the soul. Okay, so the first creation of the body, and then is packed up in a subtle body, creates a body, which later becomes the root cause of various other bodies. And that those other bodies come because of fruit of activities and reactions. All these phenomenal manifestations are the combined actions of your material energy. Hey, Haribol. Vijitatma. Hare Krishna. Param. Hare Krishna. Govinda. Just on a roll here with Krishna book. On a roll. Hare Krishna. So this is the Shivajiwara offering prayers. And he realized that he was up against the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes, and that the only thing he could do was surrender. There was nothing else he could do. He just surrendered. He was done. So he's having all these wonderful realizations. He says, you are transcendental to such compulsions of material energy. You are the supreme tranquility. You are the last word in freedom from material contamination. You are the last word. You are the last word. What's that last word? Krishna. You are Krishna. Krishna is the last word. So my father, he used to chastise me a lot. He says, you always want to have the last word. I didn't know what he meant. I didn't know what he meant. He said, he would say, don't backtalk me. You always want to have the last word. I didn't know what he meant. And I would say, what's the last word? He said, don't backtalk me. Don't do the last word. I said, what's the last word? He said, I didn't understand. I mean, I was just little, you know. I think he might have been playing with me, actually. So, Krishna has the last word. Krishna is the last word. It's funny how Prabhupada words that here. He says, when Shivajiwara is offering his prayers, you are the last word. You are the last word. In freedom from material contamination. I am therefore taking shelter of your lotus feet, giving up all other shelter, like Lord Shiva. He continues, my dear Lord, your appearance as the son of Vasudeva in your role as a human being is one of the pastimes of your complete freedom. Now, we accept that Krishna appears as the deity. That's an incarnation, Archa Vigraha. Okay? And he appears in wood or stone or a painted form of some sort, marble. And we accept that he appears in sound, that he's non-different from his name. That's a sound vibration, his incarnation of the holy name, Hare Krishna. So he also appears as a human being. He can appear as a human being and act like a human being. If he can appear in a deity form, in a rock or stone or something, or he can appear in a sound, why can't he appear as a human being? What's the big deal? Of course he appears as a human being, if he so desires. Hare Krishna. My dear Lord, your appearance as the son of Vasudeva in your role as a human being is one of the pastimes of your complete freedom. To benefit your devotees and to vanquish the non-devotees, you appear in multi-incarnations. All such incarnations descend in fulfillment of your promise in the Bhagavad Gita that you appear as soon as there are discrepancies in the system of progressive life. When there are disturbances by irregular principles, my dear Lord, you appear by your internal potency. Your main business is to protect and maintain the demigods and spiritually inclined persons and maintain the standard of material law and order. Simultaneous to the maintenance of such law and orders, Your violence to the miscreants and demons is quite befitting. This is not the first time you have incarnated. It is to be understood that you have done so many, many times before. My dear Lord, I beg to submit that I have been very greatly chastised by the release of your Narayanshvara. It is certainly very cooling, yet at the same time very severely dangerous and unbearable for all of us. My dear Lord, as long as one is forgetful of Krishna consciousness, driven by the spell of material desires, and ignorant of the ultimate shelter of your lotus feet, one who has accepted this material body becomes disturbed by the three miserable conditions of material nature. Because one does not surrender unto you, he therefore continues to suffer perpetually. Sitting in the cave with tunnel vision and only seeing the shadows on the wall, and absorbed with my problems, my this, my that, entangled by the material reflections of reality, not able to perceive the actual reality, focused on the shadows. Very pessimistic. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. After hearing the Shivajiwara, Lord Krishna replied, "O three-headed one, I am pleased with your statement. Be assured there is no more suffering for you from the Narayaneshvara. Not only are you now free from fear of Narayaneshvara, but anything in the future, or anyone in the future, who simply recollects this fight between Shivajiwara and Narayaneshvara will also be freed from all kinds of fearfulness." After hearing the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Shivajiwara offered his respectful obeisances unto his lotus feet and left. Three heads. On the one hand, it's like, well, how does that work? You know, I've got difficulty enough dealing with one head of mind, and this entity has three heads. But then I think, well, I have two arms, and they work together. They cooperate. I have two legs. They work together. I have two eyes and two ears, and everything's coordinated. So there must be some coordination with someone who has three heads, six eyes, 6 ears, 3 mouths. It must be all coordinated to work together. Hare Krishna. But Brahma has 4 heads. They're all coordinated, work together. Work together, like with my 2 hands. Like this one can pick up the cup and hand it to this one, and then puts it, this other hand just sits down and rests, and this one puts it in the mouth, hands it back to the other hand, puts it back on the table. So they work together. They're not competing. They're cooperating. So it must be like that. Somebody has 3 heads. Maybe 2 of them just sit there quietly while one of them's doing something that they're really good at doing. And then for the benefit of what they all want, what the entity wants to do, he may pass off another part of the activity to the other head, and then the other 2 just sit there and wait. And each one may have their specific proclivities. Oh well. Yeah. trying to understand. Hare Krishna. Okay, so Banashura exited stage left. And there's a little bit more here. Lord Shiva is going to surrender. And then Banashura is going to get liberated. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.